We have three amazing women who have dedicated their careers to shaping the future through education. I'll give them a moment after Sarah's fantastic introduction to do a quick introduction of who you are and why you really invested your lives in education. And then we'll explore some of the nuances of how their work is weaved throughout the world, thinking about policy and government and how you can take action on making a difference in happiness through the lens of education. So go ahead, if you would like, Diann, to kick us off.
Hello, everyone. I am the Vice Dean of the Chaplin School of Hospitality and Tourism Management at Florida International University. Truly, I don't know much about hospitality management. I know how to enjoy a hotel and a great restaurant, but mostly I have an education and psychology background. And the reason I got so interested is many years ago, I took a course called Education of Self, and it changed everything. And I thought, that's what I want to do.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Well, for me, being a psychologist, I was always touched by the possibility of transformation, and education is, in itself, the best way, from my point of view, to do it. And a few years ago, I did a big research, a longitudinal research with 2,200 students in Portugal from 8 to 18, 3 years of gathering data with them. And we've discovered a lot of things that really made me be more involved with positive approaches. Namely, they were having no hope for the future. They were feeling that their results at school would have an impact in the way people love them. And also we've discovered that a student who will get into a school whose levels of depression were high, will, even if he or she was not depressed at the time, will gradually become depressed to get closer to the average results of the school. So there was a need to do something and begin with this new generation and approach of positive education, and that's why I got there.
That's why you got there. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, good afternoon, good morning still. I think my name is Satoko Yano from UNESCO. I'm still in Paris in headquarters, working for education policies section. I have been very, very passionate about education from the very young age. I do believe very passionately the power of education to transform lives, especially in the difficult situations. And then I also have to confess that I have been an education economist as well in the past, and then thinking about education must be the best investment the country, anyone can make. And I was looking at the numbers, number crunching, cost-benefit analysis, and these things, and realized at some point that then, okay, but where is satisfaction? Where's happiness? Where is well-being in these numbers and the formula that we are talking about? That's how we started really interested. I started also really interested in this sort of soft side of education that led us here, and very happy to share some thinking with you today.
Amazing. And then I'm going to start with you because you work in a very particular field, and maybe share with the audience what your inspiration was around education for global peace sustainability. Honestly, I hadn't heard of the term before preparing for this, so would love to learn a little bit more about what inspired you to go that route.
Thank you. Well, we were working for several years with families living in poverty conditions, where the level of school drop-out was very, very high. And we did a big study with 1,200 families that lived, in the verge of their capacity to survive in the Azores Islands, which was one of the poorest areas in Europe for decades. And so being, involved in positive psychology for 20 years or more, we kind of felt that there was a need to look into these vulnerability populations, the ones that are more excluded, and that somehow the happiness studies were leaving behind those that eventually needed it more. So that was one thing. The other was that we also needed to bring an economic perspective. We were in the previous financial crisis, and bringing the topic of happiness could feel, not dignifying the pain and the suffering that people were going through. So we began looking for models of happiness that could somehow be more respectful of all these difficult conditions. And we ended up working with an Italian economist, Luigino Bruni, who is a specialist on public happiness, felicitas publica. And the word felicitas in Latin, has a root linked with fertility, generativity, virtuousness, faith, feminine. And it made a lot of sense that this Latin view of happiness would come forward, in particular because it is an eudaimonic point of view. How can we bring our virtuousness to the common good, to contribute to the common good? And so we use this model, which also brings the topic of relational goods into place. And here we are, connections. And so how can we bring this to education? What is happening in our schools that made them become transactional? I mean, we relate as teachers and with students and parents with teachers only because we want grades, a diploma. It's very instrumental. And so we are losing the basic, which is the quality of the connection that is involved. So putting all this together and thinking that we needed a broader topic to connect with public happiness, we got into the peace studies. And I don't know if you know about it, but as Johan Galtung, the father of peace studies in the world, described negative and positive peace. And negative peace is our capacity to solve problems and to deal with war and conflicts and prevent them if possible. But also, that's not enough when you think about peace. And so we need a positive peace. What is positive peace? Is creating conditions for attitudes and human systems that actually bring forward equality, sustainability, justice. And we ended up creating a UNESCO share with the support of the Secretary General of the United Nations, who is a Portuguese, actually, António Guterres, and the President of the Portuguese Republic. And we created this movement, which is now spread with partners around the world, to bring happiness studies with positive peace together and bring it to education.
It's amazing. Great. Satoko, can you also then build off of the UNESCO lens?
UNESCO program.
Maybe, yeah, and tell us a little bit about the Happy School
Sure.
initiative and your engagement and involvement?
Oh, thank you very much. So UNESCO Happy School Initiative was a framework born in UNESCO back in almost 10 years ago, 2014, actually started an Asia-Pacific regional program as a framework to reform education to make school a happy place. That time, we felt that then in many Asian countries, education has been very, very stressful, highly exam-oriented, very detrimental to actual learning. So we came up with this framework with 22 criteria under 3 pillars of school environment: people, process, place. Obviously, don't have time to go over it, but then a lot of them are about positive relationship, empowerment, trust, and then sense of community. How to turn schools into a happier place for teach and learn. So since then, we had launched it, and then we had 3 countries in Asia piloted and started to take into it. But then it sort of stayed in the regional program for quite a long time. But then especially after the COVID, and we started to hear that actually it's not only about the Asia-Pacific problem, this stress, and then schools is supposed to be the source of joy and happiness, but it was actually what I was doing was opposite. School was source of the fear and stress for many, and it's actually a global problem. So the last year, we decided to go global. We are evolving the framework, looking further into the system changes, because we have, in the Asia Pacific program, we had focused a lot on teachers and school leaders to transform schools. But then we also realized that in order for us to transform schools, we have to transform the systems. We cannot really change the schools if the teachers remain overworked or under-supported, and the students have to take one big exam in the end, and then that determines their life. Nothing, we cannot really do much. So we are now really looking into the systemic changes in education, using happiness and well-being as a guiding principle of education policies, and also as one of the key outcomes of education. It's not like instead of, but then as a foundation for actual academic excellence as well. So I can stop here and we can continue.
Well, so go in a little bit more on maybe some of the challenges you've experienced, right? So the way that you're expressing it in the pilots and the ability to think about change and system changes sounds incredibly complex and hard, and I'm sure there's a lot of opportunities that you have come across while rolling out programs. Are you able to maybe share some insights about what those opportunities were and how you were able to overcome them?
I think the biggest challenge that we had so far was actually convincing the policymakers. I think this message is coming across all the talks that they have been listening. I think we have enough evidence. I think these people in the room are convinced that happiness is important for when it comes to turning into actual operational policies. There's some gap. We still talk about evidence gap, which we really have to work with people like Helena and then other people here. And it's actually how to translate them into actions, how to convince them. I think yesterday I was talking, the Lord Gus was talking about the importance of advocacy, influencing the policymakers and politicians. I think that's something, the challenge that we have so far. And the second challenge that I can address is here right now, is that not many people know about happy schools, actually. Not many people at UNESCO is working in this area, who is having this framework. So I'm here today to share this idea or this framework, this initiative that we have been working for almost 10 years, to find people to work with, and especially in this sphere of happiness and well-being. And this is one big opportunity that I see today. But then also moving forward, I really think that then the time is ripe. Really, after COVID-19, I think there are some countries started to implement or adopt this Happy School program without even UNESCO being engaged. Like Portugal, it's one of the cases. They saw the framework, decided that it's relevant to their countries, so it started to implement. And then Yemen, another country, you don't think.
No, I didn't. That face was a real face of surprise.
Yes, you don't really think, but they thought, okay, this is definitely what we need. We need happiness in our context. So Yemen pilot is just starting, but then the government is trying to, establish a little committee to look into this happy school frameworks, to come up with the Yemeni version of the happy school framework to implement. So there's lots of interesting and sort of exciting initiatives at the country level. Also at the globally, and regionally, I know European Union is very much keen to integrate well-being in education policies, so we are working with them. And so is OECD. I'm very happy to be partner with them. And then also, not even for the rich countries, in the poorest, for the poorest countries, we do think there should be some foundational skills that everybody should have, and the minimum. And we started to talk. We were talking about these countries where the majority of children, 10-year-old children, cannot even read simple text. That situation, we are saying, okay, there are 3 areas of foundational skills: literacy, numeracy, and social-emotional learning.
Wow.
So I think it's definitely the tide is with us. So I think now it's a time to work together.
Love that. Diann, go ahead, yeah. So Diann, you started off mentioning that hospitality was something that was not something that you practice necessarily study, but you had a moment and an inspiration around happiness and well-being, and you have been able to be a change maker and a catalyst within your educational system, higher ed, to bring about courses that will impact and shape the lives of your students in a way that is on the other end of the spectrum, right, of the younger students, and now you're seeing them in the university settings. Can you tell us about how that happened and what that spark was that caused that change?
Thank you. It was really very self-serving.
Okay.
I was an academic advisor, and there's the process of getting a course in the curriculum and the content. So I was comfortable with the content, but once I was on the inside, I saw what the process was. And so I started, long time ago, introducing a course, another course, managing self and others, self-empowerment, team building, social responsibility, emotional intelligence. Any course that was of interest to me, I started putting it in. A little here and a little there. The students loved these courses. They loved the courses. But I also felt the sense of, I better fly under the radar because this is hospitality management. It's, not this. And then one of my self-care rituals is taking a walk with my fabulous friend, Sandro Formica.
Connecting the dots?
Connecting my dots. And one day, we're walking, and he says, well, why don't you just make it a major in hospitality management? I said, wait, what? The majors in hospitality management are hotel and lodging, restaurant management, event management. How could you have a major just in all of this? But by this time, I had been promoted enough to be influential enough to put it into the curriculum and to know the process. And I did. And the students love it. They just love it. And why not? I mean, certainly it relates to hospitality management. If these people are going to go out and have to be hospitable to others and welcoming to others and kind, they better know how to fill their own tanks and to know how to have a balanced life. But truly, it could be any major. I mean, it just so happened it was hospitality management. It could be any major. It's just a matter of having the confidence and knowing the process of how to wiggle in to get this as part of the curriculum.
So you saw an opportunity, had a really great connection with...
I would not say I saw an opportunity.
Well, you always...
I would say I created the opportunity.
Ooh, I like that. I like that. So it's an interesting way of looking at systems change and the different systems that we're operating in, right? So country, a city, an institution, and that ability to cause change to happen. Helena, can you talk a little bit more about the students that you work with or interact with and how happiness in education is really producing kinder, more empathetic humans?
Well, we've been trying to do, the issue is so complex that we need to do a lot of things at the same time. So we've been organizing, first we organized the first symposium on well-being universities with deans from all the continents and directors of well-being centers. So we've been worried also with a higher education level, where, as we all know, there's so much mental problems currently. And at the same time, trying to bring politicians together with heads of schools. We currently have trainings going on in Portugal where we have local politicians. We actually decide, what's happening in their municipalities and communities. And they work with the heads of schools. We are working together in co-constructing leadership and empathy type of leadership. So we try also to have the, political, the ones who have the power to make decisions, and there's somehow, a feeling, even for them, that gradually these topics make sense. So they want to be more empathic, more compassionate. We've been researching on compassion to know exactly what we can do to promote, deliver, and enhance compassion and our capacity to deal with the suffering of others. We have been training people on cooperation. Sometimes we just say students that they should work in groups. Do they know how this works? Do they know how to deal with conflicts that emerge? How exactly are they able to cooperate and interact in ways that we call the ethics of caring? So bringing all these things together and at the same time bringing the science behind, studying. We do a lot of action research projects so that we are intervening at the community and at the same time assessing what's happening and the impact that we are achieving. And also creating conditions for the whole system to be part of the change around human rights. So UNESCO is really interested, as you know, in focus and promoting human rights. And sometimes, you know, even the quality of education is part of this process. Thinking about assessment, what are we doing in the way we assess performance? We are creating mental illness with, you know, the level of competition, individualism that is, you know, the process itself brings probably the opposite of what we do know from happiness studies that needs to be into place. So, you know, bringing these things together, inviting teachers and politicians to rethink the processes of pedagogy, relational education instead, where we actually promote relationships in a respectful, dignifying way, relational assessment processes, and then go into the community and actually serve. Since, you know, the beginning of their lives, they need to feel that even their best character strengths, their virtues, only make sense if they can be contributive to all the solutions that we need for the problems that we created as humanity. So it's very complex, but also fascinating. And it means that we need to be intervening at many, many levels and to use happiness studies not only from an individual point of view, how it helps me to become a better person, but how I am a better person because I'm part of the solution for a just society.
Great, love that. Satoko, can you build off of that and go into specifically how governments can help and bring to life the Happy School program?
Actually,
like a really tactical, action-oriented way.
Yeah, actually, but Elaine said everything I wanted to say. I think we need to connect UNESCO dots
I
as well.
think that,
but then I think
yes.
I think that's great. I think
yeah.
we can build on it. I think that very quickly, I think the governments really wish to see, for instance, Ministry of Education working very closely with Ministry of Health and other working on happiness and well-being. I think the communication is there, but then like a real collaboration or co-creation, I think it's yet to be done. I think so. So the governments individually or collectively, I think we can create the global movement for happiness in and for learning. So that's something we really want to see, and we want to work with every one of you here to advocate for the importance of happiness as a foundation, as a guiding principle of learning, but then also the foundation of the lifelong learning. I think because we all know that the world keeps changing, we need to continue learning. But if you make learners suffer through their education, how can they become a lifelong learner? So I think we want them to come out loving to learn. I think that's the main purpose of education. That's the key message that then the government, or we should convey to the government, and hopefully governments will convey collectively. I really like the idea of the well-being goals. I think it's to make it the global priority. I think that's how we want to see.
Can I just add an example of something that we are doing? We have a big problem of corruption in Portugal, as the recent World Happiness Report again showed. And we are doing all kinds of intervention in schools for anti-corruption. So we are working with the kids and the teenagers and at all levels, inviting politicians to come to schools or bringing the students, to their places to work around integrity, honesty, and all the things that we need to develop to be sure that corruption gets lower. So, and at the same time, we'll be launching next month the results of the study of happy schools in Portugal, not your happy schools, our happy schools. How happy are students and teachers in Portugal, so that we also have the data to continue inviting politicians to understand why this is important and why we need to bring all these collective forces together to make changes.
Talk about a level of accountability, right? So the kids are watching, and that's a really great way of planting that seed. All right, so we have one last question, Diann. I'm going to throw it over to you to close us out. Of leaving the audience, educators, policymakers, leaders of government who may be in the audience that would like to do something similar in terms of sparking that idea and bringing happiness and well-being into their school systems, even if it's a higher education and not maybe necessarily through like the government perspective that we just talked about. So close us out with an inspirational thought.
Thank you. Well, two things. One, a plug for the Chief Happiness Officer Training. Florida International University co-sponsors this great program, and sometimes online and sometimes in person, right at FIU. So if you come, I will welcome you. You could stay at my house if you need a place to stay. Oh.
It's in Miami, pretty nice offer, very nice offer.
Very happy. I don't cook well, but other than that, you'll figure it out. But the other thing is really to start right where you are. Plant your garden right where you are. So maybe you don't have a connection at a college level, but so many of you showed me pictures of your children. They're in school. Find out, how can you impact the curriculum? Ask, what's the process of getting something? The content is so available. Just tell them, I have the content, I have the tools available. How do we move this forward? You've been so energized, we've all been energized by this collective energy that we're all like-minded. But you might go out, and as we've discussed before, not everybody is on the same page. So anticipate that you might get 9 no's, not this nose, no's, before you get a yes. But keep trying and ask. Just put out, somebody has to do it. Why can't it be you? And that's what I would say is that, as I said before, I didn't see an opportunity. I created the opportunity. And that's what I'd like to invite you to do.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank our panel.